I get complimented on my texturing the most out of anything in my building. And with that comes a lot of questions of how to texture. Now, I'm an architecture student, and a lot of the knowledge that I have has come from research for projects or just a natural 3 a.m. hyperfixated deep dive into rustication. I don't claim that this is the only way to do texturing or coloring, but this is just how I do it, and I thought that it could help at least a few people. So here is a video explaining how I go about texturing and a bit of a deep dive into my thought process behind some of the builds that you're seeing right now. So before we get started, let's have a look at the different kinds of texturing. Everybody in the Minecraft community calls this process texturing. In reality, it's actually coloring, because no texture is actually being added. There's no 3D-ness about it. We're just coloring in for the different effects that it gives. There are a few different types of coloring too. First things first, you need a canvas that you're going to build on. So on this simple canvas here with the basic door, very simple windows, and just like a general basic shape, I'm going to show you some of the examples, and then I'll get into the process of how I do each one and how I go about combining them all. So this is the first one, shading. You're creating static shadows based on a predetermined light source. So for this instance, the light is coming from somewhere over here, and this one looks best from kind of a distance. You can see the little shadows. And this one is what I'd actually call texturing, where you're breaking up the sort of noisiness of a block like this one, where the planks are really noisy, and then you go into more clean, very simple mangrove stripped logs, and it just adds a little bit extra detail, better for up close. And this is the third one, patina. And I'm sorry, because that is a bit of a buzzword. Basically just like the weathering, aging, or a bit of leakage, that sort of stuff. And the last one, pretty much what I call realism, which is usually my final form and a sort of combination of all the other layers. And you'll get to see this one at the end of the video. Okay, so with our shading already done here, I'm going to show you how I go about it on a blank canvas. So to begin, we need our block palette, and usually I like to have the block that I want the building to be made out of, and then I go 2 shades darker. So in this case, I grab netherrack and the stripped dark oak wood. I also like to have a shade lighter as well. This one I use very sparingly, so it's not entirely necessary. Now I'm going to use the Axiom mod a lot, which is this menu, and specifically this tool here, the replace mode, which makes it so that you can just instant replace a block like that, which is very useful for stuff like texturing. I would really highly recommend Axiom, even if you're not going to use this whole menu. I know that this can be quite overwhelming, but it is pretty simple once you get into it. You can go one tool at a time, but like stuff like these are very helpful. I won't go into it. This is an Axiom tutorial, but I do think that it is completely worth it. And if you are struggling with your block palette, something very simple is with Axiom, you have the color picker and the gradient helper. So if you know I want to use stripped dark oak wood and my base block is the mangrove planks, then it can give you a whole bunch of options in between that. In fact, my netherrack doesn't even fall in between it, but that's okay. The color picker, you can go, I have mangrove planks, you put it in there and it gives you blocks that are similar in color, and you can move around the scale. So I want a little bit darker, then that's where you can find the netherrack, and then even darker again. Then you find the stripped, well, you actually don't, but I think you eventually would. And if you go lighter, find the red terracotta. Yeah, that's just like some shortcuts that are very helpful. Okay, with this block palette now sorted out, let's get into it. First step is to decide on a location of your light source. So for this one, the light is coming from here. That's why this is the lightest part, and we have like the shadows kind of fading across to the right like that. And because of ambient occlusion, basically that means that light bounces. Even though the light source is here, you can still have aspects where the light over here is a little bit lighter than even directly under this, because light will still kind of bounce off of this wall and get reflected onto this one, that sort of stuff. So that's why this wall wouldn't just be like entirely dark, which is kind of helpful for when you're working out like a logical way to shade. And the other thing is that I sometimes like to create overhangs when there isn't any. So like here, technically this wall is completely flat, but I'm imagining that there is tiny little bit of an overhang that does create this little shadow. It creates that little extra bit of depth where you can now see that there is actually a shadow on the roof, even though there probably wouldn't be if it was like using shaders or something like that. Okay, let's actually place some blocks. I usually like to start with my darkest block and then kind of transition into the lighter blocks. So let's decide on a place for our light source. Let's just go, I think, directly in front because I think that could be fun. So we'll imagine if I put angel place on, I can place a block here, and I like to just grab glowstone. I just create like a little imaginary sun, which actually the sun is there in this world, so that's, I guess it's higher. But anyway, because the sun is coming from this way, we're gonna have shadows pretty even underneath, because like this one, the shadows are kind of casting that way, whereas this time they're gonna be pretty straight on. So we're just gonna go dark blocks underneath like that, and it'll probably be on the front here too. Now that's gonna look boring if we just do straight lines and go like this, and it's probably going to be pretty inaccurate, which you can do that and it's pretty simple. But I like to dither, which dithering is kind of like randomizing a little bit. So instead of having this be perfect, we're going to add a little bit of imperfectness to it. And maybe there's something blocking, some light is being bounced off somewhere weirdly. I don't know. I'm making stuff up as I go. And I think that that's the fun part of it. I realized that I've called this a block palette, which it sort of is, but it's also a gradient, which I thought I'd just mention that just creating a nice gradient that we can then use to shade. Another thing is that if you have, say we have our light source here that's coming in, and we want to have a light source coming from another side or something as well, and we want this to be not dark here because on this side we have a light on it, you can use stuff like these trapdoors where on the side, this looks flush and it looks like it's all the same color, but we've actually got the stone here that's a different color. So you can use trapdoors, shelves. Yeah, I used even signs as well, where you can use a mixture. It's just adding that right color to the wall. Next coloring technique is texturing. That sounded really weird to say because they're such different things. Basically, when I say texturing, I mean adding or reducing noise. So a wall like this with the planks could do with some denoising because there's a lot of lines. And I kind of said this already, but because there's a lot of lines, it's just like a lot of texture and there's so much going on. So we want to get something that's a little bit smoother, a little bit simpler, and then we can get rid of some of that crazy texture. And this one is a bit of a weird one. I like to do it like this, where you have like blobs, like little patches. And if I'm being honest, I'd very rarely use this without also combining the other two styles. So you won't see very often, at least in my more recent builds, texturing like this, because I think that by itself, it almost doesn't have reason for being there. It's just like, to get rid of that noise. What I would say is that this is like the second tier of texturing. I think first tier I have on one of these walls like this, where there's a lot going on and some people build like this. And this is what I kind of consider block vomit to be, where it's like there's no logic to this system. It's just like texture. It's just kind of randomly placed. In fact, I used literally the noise painter to just like paint this on. That's like tier 1. It can look good on builds. I'm not like against it in any way, but I like to, the next tier from that is to use this sort of style. And then I think the next level is to combine all three and go for that final result. And another random tip, which is why I actually have this here. So this is called rustication, and it became popular in Italian Renaissance architecture and was also kind of quite commonly used in medieval times. It creates a sort of hierarchy in your building where the bottom is like the bigger, chunkier textures, and then the top is the smaller, more simple textures. You kind of imagine it like at the bottom, it's like really rough and rusty, and then the top, it gets smoother and simpler. And when I kind of just started building, I think that often when my builds looked a little bit uncanny, I think that this was a very big reason why, because it would be sort of opposite. Another example of this I have over here. The bottom is kind of this bigger sort of texture, and then the top is the smaller style. Okay, here we have part 3, and this is where we're getting into kind of more logic-based stuff. Basically, this is kind of almost adding lore in a way, but it's kind of the story. So you get to get your building like this and decide whether it's old or new or unkept or maintained, whether dirty, water damaged, or just whatever you can really think of. You kind of go like, you know, is this building old and has it been repaired like this with more modern technology? Or if it's near the ocean, has it been damaged by the salt water? If the homeowner is poor, is it poorly maintained? These are like the sort of questions you need to ask yourself. If you have a pipe that has water coming through it, does it have a leak that damages the building? If you have plants like this, has it sort of eroded the building? I just kind of look at what I have and then answer these questions. I also like to add very rare, like weird, subtle deviations in color, like this what is that, netherite gold ore, where I honestly don't really know what it is, but I feel like it just adds a fun random little bit of detail. But I like to sometimes not be so like confined and put myself in that sort of box where it's like, would that be there or would it not? This is a sandbox game, I can do whatever the hell I want. But sometimes those details can be like a roof that's weathered a lot and some part hasn't weathered, or that sort of damaged patch of wall that's been mixed with the wrong color of paint or something like that. But this is sort of where your imagination just really can take off. Let's move over this plant pot. I'll put it in a different spot just to spice things up a little bit, and then bring this pipe over too. And that lever's going to be facing the wrong way. That's better. And actually, let's move this on the front, because why not? Over here, you'll see I used a little bit of green to show that it's sort of decayed. We have our green terracotta. Let's say that there's a leak at the bottom here. And then it's just that same sort of thing where I call it dithering. I don't actually know if that's the right word. I think dithering is sort of randomizing texture. I think that's a game design. Yeah, I think that's like a coding game design sort of technology. I could be wrong. So we have like a little leaky bottom, and then let's add a little bit of erosion on this plant pot here. Let's go a little bit more drastic than this side, because why not? And this is a bit of an annoying bit where we have a stair here. So I might just grab dark oak wood and I'll replace that like that. I'd actually change that to spruce. I don't know, that looks fine. I apologize if I'm super jittery. I don't usually build while recording. That'll do. That seems a little bit over the top, but that's okay. And you know, one example I didn't do on this side is that, you know, if it's a rainy area and you have a roof like this, maybe it sort of like droops off the side and you have like this sort of falling erosion, and it doesn't always have to sort of like expand out to the sides like this. In fact, I want to get rid of that. Yeah, that'll do for now. Pretty happy with that. Yeah, it's just doing like subtle things like that. And honestly, I'm not a huge fan of this. I just kind of did that for an example. Okay, so those are my 3 different points of view. Let's now dive into what I call the realism and combine everything we've learned. This is what I have. I think it doesn't really matter what order you do each one. In fact, I think that I usually go back and forth and it's a real jumbled mess which order I do it. If you like structure, I'd probably go in the order that I explain them. That's just what made most sense to me, to shade and then add a little bit of texture and then your patterner. So let's start with, I'm just gonna go grab my block palette over here. Oh, also another cool thing with Axiom is that you can create this, which is just like every block in the game in I forget what it's called. I'll show you how to do this because I want to work out what it's called. I just create like a big old box like that, enter operations and color field. Boom. Oh, I've created that in the grass. That's okay. And then you get all the blocks in the game like that, which I do usually kind of like run through and break all the ones that I'm not going to use, like this, the budding amethyst. I'm zooming around. Budding amethyst, I'm not going to use that in survival, not survival friendly, say command block. So I just get rid of those. Coral block I can't really use, so I get rid of stuff like that as well. And then I think there's a few Axiom specific blocks, like a structure block, mob spawner. Yeah, but anyway, that doesn't matter. Let's grab our shading gradient. I'll try to keep it different from that, and I'm actually going to go from the front. You know what? I'm probably just going to combine the 3 of these. So if I go over here, completely just pinch that, bring it over here. There we go. And then I'll use these bits here. Let's see. Oh, I also need to grab that. Perfect. All right, what have we got? We go around like this, there and there. And sometimes these clash and you just kind of got to choose what you prioritize. So usually I prioritize weathering, put that in there. You know what, maybe I'll do both of those. No, I won't do both of those. That looks a bit wrong. And then what else do we have down here? Oh, that's the replace tool. And then we'll do like that kind of leaky roof look. I'll just go like that. That's okay. I'm not really going to worry about the sides too much, but I am going to do this side as well. As I say that, this one's going to be a little bit chill. Yeah, that'll do. In the ground. And screw it, I want to add a little bit of this. Let's just chuck it in. I don't really know what the idea of it is. Maybe it's like a little bit of splattered paint or something, bit of damaged wall where there's you can see like the plaster or the original color, the paints come off, something like that. And then our last job is to add in that sort of texture. So I use the stripped mangrove, and also on this side used brown terracotta. So that's where you just kind of be a little bit random, do whatever you want. And I'll just do a bit of it randomly. That's where it's kind of up to your own choice. Do whatever you want, whatever feels right. And then final tip is that if you're not happy with a little transition you have, that's where your signs come in really handy, and buttons. And a lot of people very recently, glass has become super popular. So with this building, kind of wanted it to be a little bit darker there, so I added in darker glass, and then I wanted to add that weathering effect, but I thought the green was a little bit too much. So I put the brown glass over the top, and it really does just like add that layer of smog, and it helps you transition between colors a little bit nicer. That can be very helpful. So let's grab our signs. Yeah, I'll grab a little bit of glass just for like areas like that. Like I don't really want that to be green on the front, so that's where you can put your glass over the top, which, yeah, I only want gray glass. That one's gonna have to stay, but that one makes sense to be kind of leaky. I'll even just extend that a little bit like that. And on this side, maybe make that a bit bigger. I swear I did just say that I wasn't going to use glass, and now I'm using a bunch. Yeah, that'll do. And then you can create your like transitions like this a little bit nicer with signs. So sign there, that one blocking off that a little bit is a little bit interesting. Why not? That there, because that's meant to be darker. This is where I love the signs, because I kind of felt like having that block be there didn't really make a lot of sense. Like, why is the erosion kind of going up? By adding in the sign, it makes the transition like it just gives it like that little bit of brown there. And especially from a distance, this can look really cool. And I'll chuck that in there as well. Maybe that one. And this is pretty much what it is. It's just like walking around, finding stuff you don't like. Usually I spend a long while on this, so that it ends up looking a little bit nicer. But this is just like thrown together quite quickly for you guys. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. I don't know which one I like more. I'm honestly pretty happy with both of them. I might like this second one more. I like the signs, like these signs here. I feel like they look quite cool. It's like it's been repaired there, sort of thing. Just use your imagination. Oh, and I'm realizing that on this side, I added a little bit of damage to like this bottom base bit, which I didn't do on the other side. So I might just pinch that and sort of just add that decay, the little leakage to the actual base of the... My goodness, it is hard to talk and build at the same time. Honestly, they look very similar. And when you go a little distance away, that's when it really like it looks quite cool, because the colors blend together a little bit and it looks a little bit less abrupt. So yeah, I think that this is kind of what I call like realism or logic texturing, and I absolutely love doing it. It's definitely my favorite way to build. But that is it. If you do have any questions, please hit me up in the comments. I love answering these sort of questions and helping people out. Or if you want a more in-depth answer, then come join my Discord. You can send in screenshots and we can like really get into it with me and the small community that I have there. Because I really do love having those sort of conversations, because I find that it is the best way to learn, asking questions or teaching it. So thank you for watching, and I hope I helped to teach you a thing or two, and I hope you enjoyed. Bye-bye. Also, sus my Patreon for the World download for free, and while you're there, consider supporting me to help me keep going.